Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Faction Spotlight with me, Doogie, the lead dev for Fiery Void at this point in time. And with me today for this one, I have Nato. I think's your preferred name, but let us know.
Yes.
Cool.
Hello.
Hi. And you're going to be talking to us about the Hyach today, right? Which is the faction that you're playing in the current campaign that we're running on Fiery Void.
Yes, sir.
Great. And shout out to Joe for being the GM on the campaign, of course. Can't mention the campaign without mentioning Joe, since he's kind of the linchpin of the whole thing. So, hi, Joe. So you were playing Hyach. As usual, maybe we're going to do a sort of intro into who they are and what their lore is. But actually, I was gonna just start off with like why did you pick them for the campaign? Since I mentioned it already.
Uh, I joined the campaign late. Most of the players that are in it were already in the campaign, already had their faction selected. Every faction that I've played in the campaign before was basically already taken, or they were not really campaign ready. Like several, as you know, several factions are missing elements of their fleet necessary, star bases, logistics, something along the lines that's necessary to play well in a campaign. Except for the Hyach. I hadn't played Hyach in a campaign, but I had extensive experience playing them before and knew that they basically had all the elements necessary for a campaign. So
Yeah, I'm going to be looking at those elements. And then actually, you mentioned previous campaigns. One of the things we should probably say about you is that you are very much a veteran of Babylon 5 Wars, and increasingly Fiery Void as well. So when did you start playing this?
I'll say my friend introduced me to first edition 98. And then I guess second edition 99 2000 when it published. I don't remember the exact year it was. With the core rule set, and then quickly into the War of Retribution. I wasn't as old as some of the people here that played first edition extensively and remember all the arguments that, like the twin array argument or whatever. I know I
Yeah.
inherited that, but yeah.
I feel like I inherited that, and from 2017. Let it go, guys. Let it go. Um, yeah, and you were heavily involved in all the sort of forums and the sort of playtesting as well. Is that right?
Yes, email groups. AOG had several email groups that you could join. One, general players and just discussion, which was essentially became like what more modern forums were. It was that weird time frame in the 2000s where when we went from the news groups and alt dot groups to email chains and Yahoo groups. Um, and then that got into playtesting. They asked for volunteers to playtest things. I mostly did playtesting of scenarios and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of ships, but they were mostly done. It was just, do you agree with points? Do you agree with the changes made? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I really, the more I hear people talk about that, the more I wish I'd been more involved. But I was just like flicking through my brother's rule books basically for Babylon 5 Wars and played a couple of games back then. Cool. So, but I guess what we're saying is you are a bona fide expert when it comes to this game. So you're a good person to hear from. Let's get into the Hyach. Damn it.
Well,
Uh,
I'd say I'd always defer to some other players. There's people in here that were, like Terrell, I think is how I pronounce the name.
oh
Like,
yeah.
I mean, his name was in the book. No, my name's not in any of the books.
No,
Like,
but
there's people that had a lot more that they had to do than I did.
yeah, but I would say your name is book adjacent, maybe. And Tyrell's a hard act to beat, so I wouldn't worry about that. Now, yeah, let's turn towards the Hayek. Do you want to say anything about their lore? I remember them being these old dudes, old alien dudes in the show.
So,
Uh,
so the Hayek are, I guess, controversial in terms of the phrase "middleborn."
hmm,
Some people would obviously jump down your throat if you say, the Yolu, Minbari, middleborn, because middleborn technically, I guess, is supposed to mean something else. It's races that are no longer around.
okay.
Like you have the ancients, then you have the middleborn, then you have the younger races. Technically, the Minbari, a lot of people refer to as middleborn, but they're the youngest of, or the oldest of the young races. Uh, but for most players, the phrase they use is middleborn. And the three essential factions that AOG published that are quote middleborn, the Minbari, the Hyach, the Yolu. The Hyach are the youngest of those three in terms of the spacefaring capacity.
Okay.
They are older, I think, than the Yolu in terms of their civilization, but technologically, like intergalactic travel, they're the youngest of those three.
Okay. Okay. But they are in that sort of separate category compared to like the Narn, or the Centauri, or definitely humans.
Yeah, they were hundreds. They were in space hundreds of years before the Centauri, put up a satellite.
Yeah, and in terms of the Babylon 5 Wars, they were a faction made for League 2, Militaries of League 2. So I guess one of the later books in terms of that. And I think League 2 is mostly known for its more sort of esoteric mechanics. Um, but they really picked one. There's a Tarata video coming soon, so I sort of mentioned that there as well. But you
Yeah,
know what?
it's where AOG, when everything used to have a flavor,
Yeah,
but League Two, everything had a customized new flavor with its new name.
yeah, it was the extra bespoke. What I really like about them, and even by the time they get to League Two, is they're still coming up with unique suffixes for each of the factions. So the Hyach are, because they're like old, or they respect their elders. I don't really know. They're a gerontocracy, which was not a word I'd
That's from the
ever.
show.
Is
Yeah,
it?
that's from the show. Yeah, the episode or whatever they have about the Hyacto, or it's
Okay.
basically the only Hayek centric episode. They basically
Maybe it's
discuss how they're
a yeah,
gerontocracy.
maybe it's a Straczynski thing, because if you ever go into the fleet selection in Fiery Void and you just look down the list, how many different suffixes there are? There are very few that are repeated actually. It's a good pub quiz question to see which suffixes are repeated. Anyway, let's talk about them in terms of their ships actually, because I think that's mainly what we're here to do. Where would you like to start in that regard?
We could start with the biggest one. The Eartha Kal Dreadnought. So as you said, suffixes. Basically, all of their ships have a two-name scheme.
Mm-hmm.
The first name is the hull, the basic hull, and the second is a role. In the various different publications, Showdown's variants and the League Two, where they exist, they give what those mean. Kal is their like command, or uh, dreadnought class. So the Eartha is the hull type. If there was to be a variant of it, it would have a different suffix. So the Kal means it's the dreadnought variant of the Eartha hull. Um, it's basically like a lot of other dreadnoughts. It's a lot of points. It's not very maneuverable. Has a lot of guns, but its main purpose is basically to draw fire because everyone likes to shoot at the biggest thing, which is kind of actually important for the Hayek because they are very expensive. They can't field a lot of ships.
They
So
are really
ha-
expensive. Yeah.
Yeah, so having a ship that, I mean, the Hayek gimmick, one of the gimmicks that they have is they have a lot of structure to their profile. The explanation is their focus of technology with their great age has been on miniaturization. So everything they make, like the argument was, the heavy laser cannon is smaller than the heavy laser cannon or medium laser cannon of any other race. It takes up less space on the ship,
Hmm.
and so they have more space for more bulkheads and et cetera, just to absorb. Um, and so that while they have a lot of structure, their profiles are actually comparable to a lot of other races, Earth or Centauri ships. However, they have more structure, like often as much as 20 to 30% more structure than you'd see in the comparable ship. Um, but because there's fewer of them, they're eating a lot more damage. So sometimes having a dreadnought is useful just as the giant target. Because the Hayek also have very powerful sensors. That's part of the argument of their great age. But not just their age, they focused on it. Whereas the YOLO are a little older, the YOLO didn't focus on sensor technology as much. Basically, the Hayek focused on it more even than the Minbari. So while they don't have a jammer, they're basically on par or better than the Minbari in terms of sensors per profile,
Yeah. I mean,
which allows
the YOLO just focused on being awesome.
all the YOLO have structure, armor,
Yeah.
maneuverability.
Just everything. It's the jack of all trades. Well, actually, they're master of all trades. Sorry to interrupt.
No, 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 not at all. Yeah, so but basically, yeah, the Dreadnought's role is basically to be a giant target. Because if it goes full defensive, it is still extremely difficult to hit. And I don't know if it's now's the time to go into their interdictor gimmick.
Well,
But
maybe we'll get to that. But just in terms of the profiles, I mean, it's 85, 85, which is actually quite petite for a sort of dreadnought-sized
Yes.
ship.
Yeah.
And you're right, but it's the kind of 12. So I'm just kind of picking up on the sort of points you've made and just sort of drawing attention to them. So the 12 it's Minbari level. It is really good for non-ancient. So I'll give you that one. And in terms of cost, 1,300. It ain't cheap. Does it carry any fighters? Oh, we can check. Yeah, I mean it carries a couple of wings of fighters.
12. Yeah.
I never use the dreadnought because it's to be fair, I've only played Hyach I think like maybe like 3 times and maybe only one successfully. So I am genuinely looking for tips on what to do with them here. So bullet sponge, I don't know. It seems like a lot of points for a bullet sponge.
The the normal battles that you play in Fiery Void of 3,500 points, the Dreadnought is very difficult to justify.
Mm,
I've tried. It's generally speaking, when I've played with them on tabletop, 5,000 to 7,500 point battles, there's a use for a Dreadnought, essentially for the fighter flight and as a target. But at 3,500 points, where everything matters more, not really.
but then
To that, so that yeah,
But then I think I might be changing my mind because I've looked at the Orokai Cam, which we'll come to. It's not that much cheaper, and it doesn't come with fighters. I don't think it doesn't come with blast lasers.
No, and personally, the only reason I really take the Oroki Cam is as the base hull for the much better Oroki Call or the Oroki Core. The
Mm,
Call is the command gunship, which is basically it gets rid of all its secondary and anti-fighter weapons and close range weapons and replaces them with heavy laser cannons.
yeah,
And yeah, heavy laser cannons are good, but when you combine them with 12 sensors, and the Hyach specialists, which if now's
yeah,
the time to go in, the Hyach specialists are essentially not elite officers, but they're one-time use boosters. So you can take a sensor specialist, which increases your sensors by 1 point for the turn.
yeah,
You can take a targeting specialist that increases your ability to hit for accuracy for all weapons on the ship by 3% for a
yeah.
turn.
We
When you
are
combine those, yeah,
getting a little ahead
go
of
ahead.
ourselves. No, so let's go back, and it's my fault because I started talking about other ships.
No, no problem.
But let's just talk about it. So the main armament, lasers, and let's just start with the one that always draws people's eye, which is the spinal laser. And it is good. I actually think it's overrated, but you tell me what you think.
It's overrated. You're correct.
Yeah.
It was nerfed during. I was again not a main play tester. I was not the. I voiced concerns on how AOG treated the Hayek. Basically, it seemed like every time there was a change in the process of the Hayek, it was to increase their points and decrease their capabilities.
Mm,
When the first round came, basically disregarding the fires, the Oroki Cam was essentially on par with an Omega in terms of points and could kind of brawl with it. Not necessarily close range with all the standard product queens, but in a standard battle, you had about a 50-50 chance, depending on how the people played, that it could take it.
okay.
It can't. And a Rookie Cam, ignoring the fighters completely, just straight Omega, straight a Rookie Cam. The Omega is, you know, more than 100 points cheaper and will win every time.
Hmm.
And that's from the nerfs and the point increases. So the spinal laser has been nerfed many times. It was originally raking 15, then it was raking 12. It used to be able to do piercing or sustain without having to overcharge. Now it can't even do the piercing at all and has to sustain like a normal weapon, yet it's a 5 turn reload, so you'll never get to defire the thing. And it's got such a narrow beam, the sustain was already kind of useless anyway. And the only
Yeah.
time you could ever fire sustain that would even be useful is on the first turn, because after the second turn, somebody can easily get out of arc of the weapon. Um, so yeah, spinal laser is massive. They also reduced 20 of the guaranteed damage. It used to be 60, 10 plus 60, and when it was raking 12, that was pretty powerful. Especially if you want to fire that piercing, But it's been nerfed to oblivion essentially. They made it quote better by increasing the range a little, so it's now -1 per hex. Because it was
I
-1
mean,
per 5 on the
the
tabletop. But
range penalty is best in class. I
yes,
think. Fire control's all right. So I mean, because I've said before, like a laser that doesn't hit doesn't do any damage. So those things are good. I guess your average damage is in the sort of 60 to 70 range. I actually would like 12 rakes. I sort of think that would be a nice way to give it sort of buff without making it overbearing. We're not going to do that
Wh-
because we're stuck with the rules we've got. But I do like the idea.
In Babcom or something later, one of the playtesters I think was so salty or upset about the nerfs that were done. Basically put the original ones before the last round of nerfs in. They call them venerables or whatever, and he put the unmodified Hyach in. Basically, they kept it's basically the last nerfs where they kept the points, but they nerfed everything down. It's got the improved blast laser instead of the standard blast laser. It's got the 12-point rakes with the extra 60 damage on the spinal laser, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really.
So
If you ever want to see what they look like, that the venerables are basically before the last round of nerfs.
yeah, maybe one day I'll look at them, but to be honest, overpowered stuff's not my thing anyway. But so I think the spinal laser, I said it was overrated mainly because I think people fixate on it and they build their whole game plan around it. It is a good chance of hitting, especially as you say with the specialists, which we'll talk about in a minute. And it will do a decent amount of damage. But you really should be just thinking about like, well, what are you going to do after you fired your spinal laser and turned one to do? So
because it's 5-turn reload, it's like the heavy particle cannon. Great. After it fires, now what?
Yeah. I mean,
And unlike the heavy particle cannon, this does less damage, so your chance of killing something outright with the spinal laser is not that great.
yeah, less damage, and that's a good thing, people. Okay, but we mentioned blast lasers, which I think probably are the best weapon that they have for my money.
Yes.
But you
Yeah,
agree?
I honestly prefer to take out the spinal laser and give it 2 or 3 more blast lasers personally. But
yeah, no, I would take that deal. I think that's a good deal. So the blast lasers, it is a laser. It's uninterceptable. It is unusual in that it doesn't deal raking damage. It deals standard damage, 16 to 34. So that can do a hell of a lot of damage. I mean, if you rolled maximum, which you shouldn't assume, armor 5, that's 29 standard damage. I mean, that's like heavy plasma gun damage almost on an average roll for that. I guess its average roll is not going to be that, but still 25, so probably 20-ish damage you're looking at per hit. Great range penalty, good fire control. It's the recharge rate is pretty good too, actually, with 3 turns.
Very, very good. It's got good range,
weapon.
good recharge. Yeah. The only downside to it is that it cannot hit primary on its rolls unless there's nothing else to hit. So if you roll, say, a primary system, you have to re-roll to hit the facing structure, essentially.
Yeah. And I think that's a good balancing mechanic because otherwise it might, a lucky primary roll would feel like a piercing weapon.
Oh, CNC out on the first hit, yeah.
Yeah. And I get that. To be honest, I sort of forget that and just target them because I just want the damage. I'm not counting on a lucky primary hit. So excellent weapon. Medium lasers are another kind of stalwart of the Hyach. I find this a bit odd. I mean, are these supposed to be like their brawling weapons? Like what?
This was part of the nerf. The Hyach were actually these are all supposed to be assault lasers. It was considered too powerful. They basically, because of their high sensors, they already had long range with the blast lasers and long range with the spinal.
Right.
They basically wanted to nerf their range, so they switched the assault lasers for medium lasers because they have a much reduced range, essentially, and a slower rate of fire.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be their brawling weapon, essentially.
Yeah. But the recharge is too high to brawl properly. But I do understand taking away the range a little bit from a balancing perspective. But I think leaving on the medium lasers and it will get to what I think is the main issue with the Hyach later, but I think part of the reason that these are your brawling weapons is a serious issue. Then moving on to masers. So what can we say about masers? Because you go.
They were very controversial then.
Yeah. I didn't realize the Hyach were so controversial, but okay.
No. I mean, there were. It wasn't honestly the Ipsha and the Corleone were probably much worse. Tirada too. I mean, the Hyach was mostly just people didn't feel it was the right way to handle it. They felt they could have just kept what they had and increased their points. But I guess AOG was afraid it was just going to end up with another Minbari where you have a Charlene that no one ever takes because it's too expensive. Anyway, the Mazer is supposed to be their version of standard particle beam. It's a microwave laser. Don't ask how that works. It's supposed to be focusing microwaves somehow. Anyway,
masers are a real thing though. Like they exist and
yes,
right.
It doesn't operate the way that basically they're treating it like it's almost like a Cascor's radiation weapon.
Mm.
The Mazer doubles armor against its target. So if you hit something that has a 4 armor, it treats it as an 8. So a lot of Mazer does nothing. It seems like on the surface a very high damage weapon,
Yes.
but if you look, it's 2 plus 2d10. So there's a lot of swing to it. So most Mazer hits will do nothing. And again, the original Mazer was a twin array. It fired twice or 3 times, but they took that away too. So because then the volume of fire could simply get past that. Now, so basically, you have a weapon that doesn't have a high volume of fire, that has a lot of swinginess to its damage, that also treats armor as double. So most of it will bounce and do nothing. However, something that people don't realize: if a Mazer hits something, even if it does 0 damage, that thing has to roll for a critical on that turn.
Hmm.
Uh, so you can cause a lot of criticals. Now, again, that doesn't really play out very well for the Hyach because they're a long range race. So if they're close in with somebody, causing a bunch of criticals one turn doesn't really help them next turn because they're already screwed because they're now point blank with you. But the effect is that also causes a lot of fighter dropout.
Yeah, and this is ostensibly their anti-fighter weapon,
Yes,
such as it is. And again, like,
but it has poor fire control against fighters. So
yeah, I was just going to say it's like it's the opposite of what you would expect from a light firing weapon.
weak against fighters was the mainstay of the Hyach concept from the very first day with AOG.
Mm.
Um, again, there was a lot of people were unhappy with that. They felt that was a cop out way of making them weaker, uh, but yeah, the Mazer is not a great. It's not a terrible anti-fighter weapon. In fact, I had a battle with Wolfgang where he was very surprised because I forced the Drowsy Sky Serpent to drop out, and he's like,
Hmm.
"Wait, I wasn't below 10 damage." It's like, oh, because any damage the Mazer causes also doubles the critical.
Yeah,
So 2 points of damage counts as 4, and it still has to roll for a critical automatically or roll for a dropout. So
yeah, but
so you can cause heavy fighters like Thunderbolts to drop out by barely nicking them for 1 point of damage.
yeah, but I guess it has the same sort of problem as the Minbari with the fusion cannons. I mean, they are fantastic when they hit, but you just don't have the volume of them to really deal
Hmm.
with a lot of fighters. Okay, so that's the Mazer. And then just sticking with weapons, Interdictor. So you started talking about this one. This cannot fire offensively, but it is very strong defensively. So you want to tell us about that?
So the Hayek are older than the Abai as a spacefaring race, but they're neighbors, and AOG wanted a lot of crossover between the two, hence the assault laser and the laser focus. Basically, the Hayek were going to be the all laser, slightly more offensive oriented Abai.
Hmm.
The Interdictor started to be more like a Hayek impeder. It just wasn't able to put sensor data into it, etc. It was supposed to basically be an intercept weapon, kind of like an Earth interceptor, except with no E-web, but it could affect lasers just at half the effect. That
Hmm.
all got taken out, and we ended up with what we have now, where the interceptor has a high intercept rating. It's -4, so I guess -20 in Fiery Void.
Yeah.
But you cannot put more of them against a single weapon. So you can only apply one interdictor to one weapon, even against ballistics, which makes them extremely weak to say the Corleone, because a lot of missiles and you can only apply -4 or -20 to each missile.
Yeah, and that is your only intercept, right? Because the Mazer can't do it.
Correct.
Right.
Nothing else intercepts.
That's rough. So it's a good thing you probably brought a lot of fighters, right? Yeah.
Well,
Uh,
it's difficult to take a lot of fighters with the Hayek as well, and the fighters are
yeah, I
honestly
know.
overpointed as well.
That's that's why I'm laughing. Okay, so those are the kind of weapons, and they're a mixed bag. There's a couple of purple systems here, which we don't see in many factions, and indeed I called them purple just so you notice them. Let's start with the Hayek computer.
Mhm. So the Hayek computer system again, the flavor or focus of them is they're ancient technology. They focused heavily on miniaturization and
Hmm.
computerization. Their computer
Sure.
system, they can apply with bonus fire control points that affect all systems. Uh, Basically, the larger Hayek ships get more of these. They can put up to 2 bonus points in each category. So capital ship, HCV or MCV, LCV, OSAT, or fighter.
Mhm.
And they can change it at the beginning initial steps of every turn. They also have a specialist, which can add more to that. So and then allow them to rejiggle that. Although I don't know if that's in Fire Void during the game during the turn. I can't remember if that specialist does that ability in Fire Void or
I
not.
don't think they can rejiggle. No, I think it has to be
Okay.
done in initial orders. But you do get the extra points, and I think it increases the cap, the
And
maximum.
one other little nerf on here. The original one, they could put computer fire control points into intercept and increase their interdictor to a -6.
Mm-hmm.
And when the interdictor was able to intercept lasers, that meant you could intercept a laser with a -3, which was extremely powerful.
It's powerful, but it doesn't. Yeah, again, that feels like.
Is it worth giving up 2 fire control points to do it? Is the question.
Well, actually, yeah, that's part of the reason I like it, because and maybe I'm doing it wrong, but when I've used the Hyach, I found the computer to be a very sort of passive mechanic. Like, I generally will look at what ships my opponent has, set my computers, propagate them to everyone, which,
Yeah.
so I'll set like maybe one capital, probably like that, propagate them up to everyone, and then that's it. And then I just kind of forget about it for the rest of the battle, and
Yeah.
unless I'm being swamped by fighters, and then maybe I sort of reverse it round. So it's one, two. It's not a very active mechanic, and I always like where players are forced to make choices, impactful choices. So
And that was the controversy, was when most of the Hayek ships have 3 points or 2 points or even 4 for the biggest ones, and you had 4 categories each with 2 points that can be changed every turn, you were doing it a lot. Removing an entire category kind of they didn't change any of the points. So the ships that had 3 points had 3 points even when there's 4 categories. So it used to be a lot more of an active mechanic, and
and
now it's kind of whatever.
it is a bit more micromanagement, but it's also kind of optional. Like, you don't actually have to do it.
No.
So, but if you do it well, you get a benefit from that. And I think, on balance, I would prefer that. But we've got what we've got, so that's the computer. And again, I will say one thing about the Hyach: they have a lot of ways of making sure they hit the enemy. So
That's what they do well. The specialty, every race sort of has like a specialty. And you say the Hayek, people say the flavor is the specialist or the computer, the lasers or spinal laser. The Hayek flavor is being able to hit things that no one else could hit. Like the Hayek can hit the Abai if they really, really want to.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
that doesn't mean they're going to kill them. It doesn't mean they'll beat them, but they can hit them. When everyone else will just be like, "Oh, I'll miss at this range." The Hayek can hit them.
Yeah. So let's start with specialists. And I don't really intend to go through them all just for the interest of time. But to is the guy that put them in the game, I think there's a few things to sort of mention here. One, I've already chosen the specialists for these ships because you have to do it during deployment. So, but I can click through, and there should be one of every one available that we can have a look at if need be. So you pick them at deployment. Before you kind of know where your enemy's deployed, but you can see the enemy fleet, so you've got some information. And then they can be activated at actually different phases now. When I first introduced them, it was all initial orders, and they were very kind of underwhelming.
Yeah.
But they can, so movement-based specialists can now be activated in movement phase, firing ones in the firing phase, and so on. What hasn't been possible in Fiery Void is to perfectly replicate the really incredibly, to use esoteric again, effects.
Yeah.
Or indeed. And the other thing tabletop veterans might notice is that all specialists are weighted equally, because I think in
Yeah.
tabletop some of them took more than one slot. So they've all kind of been balanced against themselves. And I'd be genuinely interested to hear what are your favourite ones, what ones do you tend to use, because there's 10 in total, and I suspect people go for certain ones over others.
In general, like it matters a lot who I'm fighting and what ships I have, but defense is great. It basically reduces your profile by 10% and increases your interdictor by 10%. So essentially, it's like being able to use that old bonus fire control
Yeah.
for defense for a turn, and you can do it during the fire step, which means which was the ultimate on the tabletop, because your opponent basically has determined weapons determination without knowing that you're going to have this massive shift. So you can force misses on weapons that they're, oh, I have a 10% chance to hit. Nope, you're actually at a 0.
Yeah.
You know, they don't realize that. And if you can draw a weapon that you can intercept, like say the heavy particle cannon, if you're fighting a warlock, essentially you're dropping his chance to hit by 20%.
Yeah.
So if you can force a miss on a long reload weapon, you need that as the Hyach because you're slow reloading as well.
Yeah.
So that one's a powerful one. The sensor one, as I said, is a powerful one. Another thing to put in that a lot of these specialists will also clear a critical. So
And
if you
then
have the reactor specialist or a sensor specialist, that can be a huge lifesaver when you get a powerful crit.
and that's an ability that doesn't, I think, exist outside ancient self-repairs. Or at least I can't think of anyone else that does that. So there's also a repair specialist, which will just repair 2 random.
Yeah.
It's not entirely random, actually. Underneath the hood, it will look at what are the most important systems that have been damaged, but you don't get to choose exactly which ones. So it's semi-random.
I can't remember. Is he like the typical? Will he actually repair the CNC crit?
Which scene secret?
Will the repair specialist actually repair the CNC crit? I've never actually had a CNC crit when I've used one in the game so far.
Yeah, it should do.
Okay.
I mean, it
So
won't.
that makes him very powerful.
Yeah. So the reason I asked, which it won't repair temporary crits, I think. So the ship disabled.
Correct, because you have to suffer a full turn before he'll work.
Yeah, yeah. So the ship disabled 1 turn, it wouldn't do that. If your ship was captured by Marines, technically that's a critical effect, but it won't fix that one. So as far as I know, actually, I'm jotting that down. That might be a fringe case that I need to check into. But yeah, it pretty much will repair anything else, though. And as I say, it basically prioritizes things in the same way that the Vorlon self-repair would prioritize things if you just left it to its own devices, because you can now set that. So yeah, I find that quite powerful. But then, if you don't get any critical effects, it's also a bit wasted.
Yeah. For that reason, I usually go more with the reactor or a sensor specialist, because the reactor specialist gives extra power, enough to buy an extra sensor point. So it's based on whatever your sensors are. And so if you've boosted up your sensors, he'll give you enough power for an extra sensor point. And then if you turn off even more weapons, you can easily give yourself 3 extra sensors in a single turn.
Yeah, and there are some specialists that work well in combination. So I mean, the sort of +1 sensors plus the targeting one. The targeting gives +3% to hit on all weapons. That's effectively +8% to hit, which again is one of the reasons the Hyach's very good at hitting people. But the sort of reactor one with the engine specialist, for example,
Yes.
could give
Where
you...
it's a reduced efficiency or increased efficiency, I guess. So it's lower amount of power to reduce the thrust. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, I think you get 25% thrust as well with the engine one. So it's you could do an insane maneuver with this dreadnought, and its thruster ratings are actually pretty decent. Probably let you do it too.
Yeah, I've done power slides or whatever with Hyach capital ships that using the thruster specialist and the engine specialist and just massive swings. The ship basically able to do almost a White Star maneuver.
Yeah,
Like 3 turns, reduce every single one to a 1 turn delay. It's
yeah.
again, you can only do it once though, once per game.
You can, but you can hold off until the actual movement phase to decide whether you're going to use it or not. Which I think there's a thruster specialist as well, which removes thruster limits, and that's the one that improves engine efficiency. So yeah, I mean I think they're quite fun. I don't think I've ever gotten the most out of them. But when I was designing them, I was kind of like, oh, there's some cool combinations here that could pay off. But yeah, it requires a level of planning and discipline that I probably don't have as a player. I generally, and I've said this to people before, I see the turn load, I have a look around the battlefield and just kind of like feel my way around for what I'm going to do. I'm not great on the analysis side of things or planning.
You play very well for someone who's just looking at that turn, then, because it feels like you're planning ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, some of it's just familiarity with the game, right? You kind of you kind of know what's going to be okay. And then if you just play okay over the course of a whole game, you can definitely get some success. Okay, so I think that's covered most of the systems of the HEAC. So let's talk about
Yeah,
the actual
yeah.
ships, or maybe rather than go through all the ships one by one in the interest of time, maybe tell us about how you build a fleet.
Well, the Oroki hulls, as you said, the Oroki Cam is their standard ship.
Mm-hmm.
That's their mainline cruiser. That's the base hull for their main usefulness, which is the Oroki Core, which is their carrier. It's basically this Oroki Cam. It just gets rid of the two front lasers,
Yeah.
medium lasers,
Mm-hmm.
for fighters. It, being able to bring the 12 fighters, but you still have a spinal laser. And again, you're losing two medium lasers, but the medium lasers aren't of much use. The Oroki Kal is the heavy gunboat variant that base or command variant that gives the increased initiative bonus to all Hayek units and packs heavy lasers all around for no masers.
Yeah, I really
This is
like this one.
obviously not well. It depends. If you're fighting a heavy race like Earth or something, this is not that useful. It seems like it would be, but you need every mazer you can field in those
Well,
cases.
you say that, but the heavy laser only has -20 to hit a fighter. And with
The blast laser has
all the HEAX bonuses
the
to hit things, that's barely an inconvenience for them, right?
well, the blast laser is -0. So a lot
Mm.
of people playing Hayek will use the blast laser against fighters because if you hit a thunderbolt with a blast laser, it's dead. I
I
mean,
found some blast lasers. Here we go. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The fighter's gone.
so if fighting an Earth, for example, a lot of times I'd bring the Senchlat hull, which is their HCV,
Mm-hmm.
essentially their escort ships. Uh, in flavor, you're not really supposed to take too many. Basically, the Hayek are all based on capital ships. In
Oh,
theory,
okay.
like their doctrine is the HCVs and MCVs are rare. 90% of the fleet is all cap ships.
Well,
But
if that was the case, why did they give us such a damn good heavy combat vessel?
exactly, yeah, the Sensa Chem is probably one of the best. It's again massively overpointed for what it is, but it's
Mm.
their best ship in their arsenal essentially because it's packing six blast lasers, including two on the rear. So it doesn't have the, you know, Centauri problem of my front got blown off and I'm useless. You still have two blast lasers on the rear with good arcs that hit to the front on a ship that's not too big and has really good sensors and decent maneuverability. So
Good
that
amount.
ship becomes your anti-fighter ship if you're fighting a heavy fighter race like the Dilgar or Earth.
Good amount of hull too. Like some heavy combat vessels do tend to get their fronts shot off, but this one's a
Yeah.
bit trickier for that. And yeah, these aren't rakeable. These lasers. The one thing, because normally I'll take one or two of these because I did not know the
Yes.
lore as usual. But I find I don't know if I'm just misusing the. I mean, the front arcs are excellent, but then obviously you probably fire the front arcs are so good you probably fire all four of them on a single turn. And then I find
It
myself,
depends on what I'm doing.
mm,
If I'm focusing somebody from long range and using all my specialists to make sure I hit, yes. But the idea when they created this ship was it was supposed to basically turn around and fire three turns in a row. That way the reload is done. So treat it more like a starbase where it's rotating, and by the time the section gets around, it's reloaded and ready to fire again. That was the intent of the ship when it was designed.
yeah, but do you know what happens? And I don't know if it's me, but it's got 10 thrust and a turn cost of 1, which is actually pretty
Hmm.
pretty high for a heavy combat vessel. And I end up just kind of doing the thing I hate doing for initiative reasons, reducing my speed so I can get those turns in to make sure that my lasers are firing every turn. And I end up just kind of like pootling around towards the back of the map, and then falling out of formation. And it works in the sense of getting the shots off, but it just doesn't seem to work in terms of winning the game.
Yes, and that gets to the crux of the problem. So the Hayek in general uh, should not be you should not be afraid to play the Hayek at speed 0
Mm.
or even reverse,
Mm.
because that was actually the intent. They it was
Right.
assumed that they'd be playing in reverse a lot, and it was almost put in or mentioned that in tabletop a lot of people would play with very large maps, like essentially infinite boundaries, and it was basically put in that you should not play the Hayek infinite boundary the same way as the Minbari because they'll just fly in reverse and destroy everybody.
I
Um,
kind of thought the Minbari did that as well. I mean, like I heard Zero tell me when I started playing the game, like on an open map with a Minbari, and the jammer obviously helps a lot.
Yeah.
It's a very different story from a standard map, and there's a reason we use the standard map, people.
Yeah. um, so, but don't be afraid to fly them at speed 0.
All right.
I don't start that way usually, but it's not unusual to do it because again, it was literally considered to be part of their doctrine.
Yeah.
Um, but to your point, yeah, they do have some. They're not the most maneuverable, but they can be because they have a lot of extra power they can throw, and they have those specialists. So all the Hyach ships on the surface, they don't look that maneuverable, but you can actually do a lot with them. And their thrusters are fairly large. They're fairly tough. They have a lot of structure, so they probably are not going to get blown off right away. Um, so you're probably going to maintain a lot more maneuverability than it looks like at first glance.
Yeah.
Um,
All
their
right.
scout, the Senchlat hull for the scout, is actually a very good Elam vessel because it also packs some of those blast lasers. So if you're loading offensive W, it can also throw some decent firepower at it. So
I think I've never really looked at this one closely. It's got a lot of firepower for a scout.
yeah,
How much does this thing cost you?
a 825, if I think, or 775 is like plus or minus 25 from the base Senchlat, which is 800.
And you get ELINT capabilities with that's
Good Elant for an HCV.
yeah. That actually seems reasonably. I know the base hull's a little overpriced probably, but this seems quite
Yeah.
reasonable.
Yep.
Hmm. All right.
The Senchlat Kier is the ballistic version that fires proximity lasers. I've never found a way to make it work. I don't know if anyone ever has. The proximity laser itself is a nice little kind of gimmick weapon.
It's a
It doesn't seem
great
to make a lot
gimmick
of
weapon.
sense, but it only fires out to what 30 or 35 hexes. The Hyach with the
30, yeah.
spinal lasers are aiming 50, 60 hexes
Well,
away.
well,
So
the hex fires 30 hexes, but then the laser obviously fires from where. For those unfamiliar with the proximity lasers, you target a hex, and then it will from that hex shoot at your enemy. So it's great fun because you can shoot people from arcs that you couldn't normally hit them, like the rear or the other side. So yeah, you could yeet it 30 hexes towards them, but then it's probably good for another 10 hexes or more, depending on how well defended the opponent is that you've targeted. I like it, but again, you're not going to win a game with it. It's more better for where you've taken a side structure off an enemy and they start to hide that, and then you can throw the proximity laser on the reverse side and shoot into their primary. I mean, it's fantastic for that, but it is a bit gimmicky. I'll give you that.
yeah, if it was more an included item, like every Hyach ship had one or two, I could see it being a lot more useful. But it's a lot of points to waste on a ship that's packing 6 of them in itself because the ship's not doing a lot of work on its own.
No.
And again, your ships are so expensive. The problem with the Hyach is you can't really fill every role. You have to
Yeah.
basically choose what you're going to do and just do that.
Yeah, and I think that's where they
So
suffer a lot in comparison to the Mimbari and the Yolu.
yeah,
And that they're not just expensive; it's their ships are a bit more specialized, maybe. Because like a fusion cannon's good for anything, right? Whereas these things are not so much. Okay, what else we got? I mean, we got to talk about. Oh, I can hear someone in the background, by the way. We got to talk about these guys. Another, I mean, very cool mechanic. But do you want to tell us about these?
so this is the Hyach sub or stealth ship.
Mm-hmm.
The leaky, I think is how we pronounce it. The purpose of this was basically that AOG wanted to recreate submarine warfare in the Babylon 5 universe, and I
Sure.
think they did a good job. It's a lot of fun, like a lot of the scenarios with it. It's more of a scenario ship. Very rarely will I ever take this in a tabletop, and that's more like a joke when we do. It's very expensive for what it is. It's very difficult to make its points worthwhile. But the ship, it's stealth. It's not a jammer. It can't be detected by your opponent until it gets within a certain range of them if they're trying to detect it with the sensors,
Mm-hmm.
or if it uses EW or any of its weapons.
And interestingly, for subs, it's only elints that can detect stealth. So it's not like mines where any ship can have a go. It's only elint vessels
Yeah,
that can.
but Well, it's if it gets within a certain range, I think of like fighters and I'm trying to remember off the top of my head because it's been a while since I played a scenario with them, but I think it's like around like 2 or 3 hexes. Most fighters could detect it if they get that close to it.
Yeah, it's something like for normal ships, it's like their EW scanner rating. So 6 here times 2 for ELINTs, that's times 3. So to be honest, if you have an ELINT and you can't break line of sight because that also stops you getting detected, then you pretty much get detected straight away. To be honest, because like say a standard ELINT has 10 EW, it can detect you 30 hexes away. Other ways you can detect, and you can see in the tooltip it says undetected because I purposely placed it far enough away. But the second I use EW, if I commit orders with some EW, it gets detected. If it fires a weapon, it gets detected. So what it can in practice do is it has a first strike ability, and it has a first
Yeah.
strike with a spinal laser because the detection points, and this is quite important, is if you don't use EW, you can sneak all the way up during movement phase because there isn't a detection point until the end of movement phase. So you won't be detected during the movement phase for these subs, which again is a little bit different from me. There's like about three. There is 3 different stealth mechanics in Fiery Void now. I can tell you that. I
Yeah.
have put them all in. And these ones are actually one of the more complicated ones. But by all means, read the factions and tiers documents for full information. We don't have time to give them all today. But they essentially it sneaks up, it gets a spinal laser shot off, and then it probably gets eaten by fighters, doesn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. Well, yes. If the person's not packing a lot of fighters from the area, though, you cannot. This is one of the rare circumstances where I do sustain the spinal laser,
Mm.
since it gets to
Yes.
basically pick the target. If you turn off those medium lasers to start sustaining it, again, it takes a long time, but your opponent also knows the longer this goes that there's a chance that laser is sustained. They have to play differently because the sustained spinal laser is dangerous.
It is incredibly dangerous. That thought would not have occurred to me. Actually, like, oh, I should change my play because it might be out there charging sustain. I just, I just don't think like that. I'm kind of like, do you know what? If it shows up and it's sustained, I'll deal with that then. That's tomorrow's problem. Okay, it has a variant which has fighters, right? You lose the main
Assault.
advantage.
No,
Um,
it's an assault variant, essentially for breaching and assault shuttles.
okay,
It was made for scenarios to basically play recovery of a prisoner off a ship type situation, or board a small station, or attack a planet under stealth. Essentially,
yeah.
I've never used it in a regular game or pickup game, but I have played it in scenarios. They can be a lot of fun. Honestly, some of the sub scenarios are a lot of fun.
Yeah, I know. I would love to see more of that kind of scenario play in Fire Void. I think most of the tools are now there, which was always holding us back. So yeah, maybe one day play a sub scenario. And I should say, if terrain's involved, it becomes a lot easier to remain undetected because, like say, line of sight. And then, in fact, once you're detected, if you block all line of sight at the end of the turn, you become undetected again, which is also a little different from say Tervalis.
Yep.
Okay, let's go on to the medium ships. We've got a couple of them here. Any thoughts?
Uh, yes, we. You don't have a lot of them. You just have the Okath Hull and the 2 variants of it. The Cat, which is their main attack version, packing 5 medium laser cannons. It is useful. I mean, that's what the one time when the medium laser cannons are really useful.
Yeah,
Basically, you use it to eliminate a ship, as you said, that has a damaged side that's trying to protect. Because these things, like most medium ships, are fairly agile. It can get to where it wants to get, and it will kill it. The Kerr version is the escort, and I probably take it more often because it packs a whole bunch of masers. So again, useful against the fighter weakness that the Hyach have.
yeah.
But it also attacks the interdictors. And again, the best. This I don't think we mentioned the good thing about the interdictors is you can interdict for an ally ship
Yeah.
if it's both the attacker and the defender are in arc and are within 4 hexes. And most interdictors have 180-degree arc, so they you usually have no problem trying to get both the attacker and the defender in arc.
Yeah, that's true, but only ever -20. I often feel obliged to take the Okath Kur because I'm just so worried about anti-fighter
Yeah,
weakness, and it's really the only ship that sort of comes with a bunch of masers. But perhaps, um, yeah, I mean it's over
the
six
arcs
hundred
on those are
points.
also amazing. If you look at them, you can bring 5 to bear if you win initiative. And again, you have decent initiative, so you will beat fighter squads sometimes. You can bring 5 masers to bear,
Uh,
essentially on the 60 or the 300-degree arc.
Oh yeah. I see it. Okay, yeah. That is amazing. But I mean, honestly, it's still just masers, so
Yeah.
it's a lot of points for masers. So medium ships not great, but I guess maybe you're feeling things out. Let's yeah, we're probably sort of closing to the end. So let's talk about fighters before I forget. They've got medium fighters. These are the Dartha is their common fighter, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with their fighters. Their fighters are both very good and very meh. They're medium fighters, so they're not, super tough, durable. They only have 9 or 10 thrust, depending on the fighter. So that's not great. As you know,
It's
11's kind
really
of the
not,
the
yeah.
tipping point where it's 11 and above that really lets you do a lot of useful things. So they're always
Yes.
short. However, they have probably one of the most amazing fighter weapons, the light
Really?
blast laser.
Okay, yeah.
It originally was a raking weapon, but now it's standard. So that was the one like good buff they got. You actually see in some of the old texts because AOG forgot to fix it, where it talks about the rake, and you're like, but it's a standard damage because there was a last minute change. Because they were completely useless was raking, but as a standard, it's pretty scary in a lot of ways. It's basically like a thunderbolt except not interceptable. Um,
And
it's an anti-ship weapon.
better
Yeah.
offensive bonus too.
Yes. Oh, yes. And again, so they're not afraid to fight other fighters. In terms of fighter versus fighter, they're not terrible, except for the fact that their thrust limits them. Like most other fighters that they want to fight are going to outthrust them and pull maneuvers they can't do. So it forces you to have to keep them closer back to your ships, but that's not too much of a threat because you're not packing twin arrays, you're packing masers. Their profile's not
True.
as great as it could be, given that the ships are so much lower than they are for their structure.
Initiative's good
They're
though.
what's that?
Initiative's good.
Initiative is good. The one good advantage that they get is the fighter mounted Dovok, Dovok fighter with the fighter mounted
That's
interdictor.
fine.
And I
Yeah.
know that caused you a lot of headache. You said to try to put it into the game.
There is a very so it's on the second fighter here, and there's a very annoying issue with that because I would much prefer if it was on the first one, but we haven't quite found that out. Yeah, don't DM me about that, guys. It's if I could fix it, I would. But anyway, tell us about the light interdictor.
It's a -3, so a -15 instead of a -20.
Mm.
Uh, but it'll gives your it's the only interdiction capability that your fighter flights have, and just like the full scale interdictor, they don't stack. However, one interdictor affects an entire flight. So in fighter versus fighter head on, you're just applying a -15 to essentially to the offensive bonus of the entire enemy flight, which is major, and it is usually worth losing that sixth gun and just packing 5 guns, especially since for the most part your guns are powerful enough to kill mini fighters outright, or at least 2 hits to take them out.
Now, I hadn't really thought about this, but what you're saying makes a lot of sense. If your fighters are going to be your main anti-fighter tool, this must massively help with dogfights, right?
Yes.
As long
So
as
basically,
long as they're
because a
in
lot of times
arc.
yeah, well, you don't have the thrust. So as the Hyach anti-fighter strategy, a lot of times it's not get up behind the person. You don't do the normal dogfighting strategies with the furball and trying to always beat the other fighter and come in at an odd angle, etc. The Hyach, you're probably just going to want to fly or only be able to fly your fighter straight into them front on.
Yeah. All
But
right.
this allows them to survive.
I think I've tried to be too coy with my fighters when I've played Hayek actually. Actually, one of the fair I like this, right? I
On
do.
paper, yes.
Well, I think I had one good game with it, and I think partly it was fleet composition. My opponent just didn't have a good answer for like me parking these over 5 hexes away and
Yeah.
shooting their ships. It can genuinely, in the right circumstances, be very difficult to deal with
Yes.
for your opponent. But
But it's rare, and as you know, with fighters, again, you're not taking too many, so you're not fielding more than one flight of these in a game.
yeah,
And so it's limited usefulness as a single flight. If it was uncommon, I might take these a lot more often. But yeah, as you said, essentially they have stealth. They're
mm,
not completely stealth like the sub, so the opponent sees them on the map. However, it gives them the effect of a Mimbari jammer at 5 hexes or more away. Um, so basically doubling the range. So if you're fighting another set of fighters, instead of jumping straight on them, you just stay 5, 6 hexes away, and the other fighter's shooting at you from too far away to hit you. Whereas you, with the high offensive bonus, don't really care. And the same thing for an enemy ship. It's basically doubling the range. If you're fighting, a twin away or something that's -10 per hex, suddenly, they're hitting at you with a
yeah, and they've
-80.
got a slightly lower profile. So if you're 6 hexes
Yeah,
away, your opponent's range penalties are doubled. It's like fighting the owls. You're not gonna get hit, so you can take
yeah.
yourself pot shots at the enemy
The,
ships.
pro- the problem though, there's the Hyach again. Their weakness is fighters, so you want to take a fighter to fight the enemy fighters. So the
Yes,
only time you're taking this is if you're fighting an enemy race that doesn't have a lot of fighters. But
and
who?
funnily enough, because my mid game deteriorated in the way it usually does with Hyach, that I ended up having to use these to just keep some of the enemy fighters off my back, and it's such a waste of points. Like you're just not getting good value from them that way. So yes, I agree, but I still, that way, like one good game with a unit can make you
Yeah,
very fond of
yeah,
it. It's exactly what's happening here.
yeah.
All right. We're not going to talk about the breaching pods. They have breaching pods. They have assault shuttles. I don't think there's anything particularly exceptional about them.
No.
I mean, their assault shuttles do get the great guns.
Yeah,
So
they got the light blast laser, but again, since their weakness is fighters, you don't really want an assault shuttle that can't, jink and be useful for
yeah,
anti-fighter work. So what's the point?
yeah, it's probably an act of desperation.
We
Cool.
skipped. Actually, you said the favorite ship. We skipped my favorite ship, which is actually
Oh,
the scout carrier. You
oh
have it up there
yeah.
next to the dreadnought. So usefulness, I will not tell anyone to ever take this. However, it saved my butt multiple times playing against other people that wanted to play Yolu or Mimbari, because this, I think, of the Middleborn races, is the best Eland ship in the game.
Hmm,
You can bring 24 fighters, which is good for anti-fighter defense.
that
I
is
was
good.
fighting a Mimbari player that had a bunch of Nile fighters, which is the only real threat to you as the Hayek. Like the Hayek fighters just die to Niles.
Yeah,
Um, so able to bring 24 fighters, and you have an Eland capability that outdoes you know the other Middleborn race's Eland capabilities. You turn off those masers because you're not using them because you brought 24 fighters, and you can easily pump yourself up another sensor point or two, especially with the specialists. And then you're able to lock on, and you can snipe the Charlins. Doesn't matter about the jammer. So you're hitting them
yeah.
from 40 hexes away. Yeah, they're very. I've had some great use with this. However, I normally will not tell somebody to take it because it is expensive, very
It
expensive.
is. It's 1,025. I do like the carrier capacity, but then you have to buy all the fighters. So in a larger game, I can definitely see it.
Yeah.
Uh,
So I'll never tell somebody to take this because 99 percent of the time, a pickup game, this thing is a point sink. But if in the right scenario, it was very useful.
uh, it's okay. We're allowed to have favorites. They don't have to be good. Um, I like her, for example. Okay. Wait. Her. Oh no, that sounds Swedish now. Okay, right. Before I dig a deeper hole for myself, any final thoughts? Summarize your feelings towards the Hayek and any last tips and tricks for anyone listening.
It's not on here, but the Starbase. I know people talk about the Starbase all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's the most powerful non-ancient Starbase. I don't necessarily agree. In fact, I think it's massively overpointed. Um, there's better ones out there for it, but it's basically indicative of the Hayek as a whole. They are overpointed for what they are, But if you can focus on a specific task you want them to do that they do well, which is mostly hitting something that can't be hit, you can make them work. However, they are very easily overwhelmed. Like several races are very good hard counters to them, and I've not figured out a way to make that work if the other person's competent.
Yeah.
And the smaller the fight, the more of a disadvantage you are with the Hyach. So at 3,500 points, there's very, very limited, capability to make them work well.
Yeah.
7,500 points, different story.
Yeah, I think there's no part of that I would disagree with. I think that has been my experience. It was my feeling when we were introducing them into Fiery Void once we got the sort of specialists working. Um, and I think to go back to the point I made earlier, people look at the Spinal Laser and think these guys are really strong, and they can be. They have their moments, but they definitely fall away. They even more so than say the Torata, for example, who have some sustain, actually quite a lot of sustain, I would say. These guys just don't have that kind of mid to late game sustain once things get really sort of close range.
Well, opposite the Tirada, these have no flexibility. Tirada are all flexibility.
Yeah,
This is none. This, you have to pick what you're doing and do it.
yeah,
And it works or it doesn't, and then you're just stuck.
yeah. I mean,
The
what I think about
Spinal
that.
Laser fires, and then what do? You have 5 turns of reload.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that was probably a bad comparison because basically I was just thinking who else has got a lot of lasers, which
Yeah.
Rada do. But yeah, I think the playstyle is very different and experience is very different. Okay, well, all that's been great. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise with the Hyach. And I hope anyone sort of listening to it has learned a bit more about them and enjoyed the episode. Any last words?
Nope. That's it. Thank you.
Great. Goodbye, everyone.
Take care.